Hey, Mason here. So this video serves as a final conclusion to my Flicker Strike Invoker. I've pushed it pretty far and it's gotten basically close enough to 2-shot or 1-shot tier 4 bosses. And I'm at a stage where I kind of want to play something else. So that's why I'm kind of making this video to round this build off. So in the previous video, I mentioned that I will be solving single target DPS and trying to figure out how to actually solve that. And in the background footage right now, you can see me and all my tier 4 boss kills for my SSF character. They're more or less 1-shots or 2-shots. On the Xesht it was a 2-shot. And on this King of the Mist, it's basically a 1-shot because he has 2 phases and he has about half HP for each phase. Generally, the Flicker does about 20 to 25 million damage, one Flicker Strike. So since bosses have about 30 mil, 35 mil, you need 2 Flickers to kill them. But remember that this is a SSF character with no specific uniques, except the Amulet, which is mostly a quality of life unique. It doesn't even help against bosses. And technically I can get actually more damage if I have an Amulet swap to one that gives me melee skill gems. So as an overall conclusion to this build, Flicker Strike is in an extremely good spot at the current moment of time. It's really good for clearing because of how fast you move around. Most of your clear comes from Herald of Thunder. I covered this in my previous guide video. But for bossing, it has a very strange mechanic that I think some skills do, but it's very notorious on this skill in particular, which is snapshotting. So if the first Flicker Strike crits, every single Flicker after will crit. Not sure if this is intentional or not, but currently that's how it works. If the first Flicker Strike is boosted by stuff like Infernal Cry, which gives you 150% extra damage as fire, every single other Flicker Strike will get that 150% extra damage as fire. And if the first Flicker Strike gets the damage buff from Ambrosia with 2 mana flasks, both using 25 flask charges each, that's 50 flask charges, and then you get 3% extra lightning damage per flask charge, so that's 150% extra lightning. That also snapshots, and every single Flicker gets that damage bonus. So by stacking Infernal Cry and Ambrosia, as well as using the double mana flask tech, you're able to get some very, very high amounts of damage. Furthermore, a Sniper's Mark, which I've ended up taking in, also seems to snapshot every single hit with the crit damage bonus. I have not actually tested this personally. I have actually looked at the numbers and I didn't really notice anything strange. Like, it looks like it works. But Ten's Frenzy Flicker from YouTube mentioned that he tested this in the previous patch and I didn't see any changes on this in the patch notes, so I'm assuming it still works. And based on my kind of brief counting, I counted about 10 flickers worth of damage. It didn't really seem like it fell off after the first flicker. In the background, there's also some content on me doing expeditions. I have not got any breach footage, but I have been doing breach. But more or less, it's perfectly fine for clearing. It's perfectly fine for mapping. And it does very, very well. It exceeded my expectations for boss DPS. Alright, and so as this footage wraps up, I'm going to hop into game. I'm going to show you what changes I've made to improve boss DPS. Alright, now that we're in game, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the different changes I made. The first one is a 6-link on Flicker. Flicker Strike links will be Flicker Strike, Pinpoint, Momentum, Perpetual Charge, Conk Effect, Hit and Run. Pinpoint allows you to cap your crit. Without Pinpoint, I'm at 60%. When I put it on, I'm at 100%. You want Flicker to crit, so every single hit crits. You don't want to have it at 90%, and then when you flicker, it doesn't crit, and you hit like a wet noodle. So personally, I think you want to get to 100% crit on this. Momentum means that you need to stand a little bit further back when you flicker to a boss. You want to flicker at as far as you can, basically 2 meters away, to get the damage bonus, and it's 40% more damage for free. This is why you see sometimes I roll backwards, and then I flicker, just to make sure I'm meeting this meter threshold so I can get the extra more damage. Perpetual Charge, from my calculations, is 30% more hits with Flicker. You can use another 30% more damage multiplier jewel if there is one available, but personally I felt that this one was pretty good because it allowed me to flicker for longer, which means I don't have to continue to get power charges more often. It doesn't actually increase your DPS though, however, because DPS is damage per second, and flickering for longer is not making you flicker faster or making your flickers hit harder. It's more of like a semi-quality of life. You can replace this with like Hit and Run is good. This one here, Hit and Run is good. That's like a pretty good option. Or Close Combat, also a good option. The next one is Conk Effect. It's just 30% more damage, and the less area doesn't matter for you because you're on a boss. This is for bossing. And the last one is Ambrosia. Ambrosia is extremely strong at the moment because of the way it interacts with 2 mana flasks. Currently, I have 2 mana flasks equipped. You can see that one is not usable and one is usable. And when I use my Flicker Strike, Ambrosia will consume, I think it's like 20 charges from this one and 25 charges from this one. And then it will give me 3% damage per charge, and I think it's 45 charges, which results in, it's like nearly 150% more damage. So let me just do that quickly. It is 135% more damage, which is kind of nuts. It basically is like timesing my flicker damage by 1.5. And it's even more crazy when you combine it with Infernal Cry as well. So that's why this is a mandatory support. The way this interaction works is you need to have the belt that allows you to put on the 2 mana flasks. So this one here, Wastegate. What I would do, for example, if I'm going to take this off, I can't put it on, right? I'm clicking, doesn't work. I put on Wastegate, I put my flask on, I swap back Wastegate to my other piece of gear. I click the well to refill both pots, and Ambrosia will use the pots. Because I made a change to use Meditate, I actually don't need this mana flask anymore. Sorry, I don't need the life flask slot anymore, so I can put a mana flask in there. The next thing to talk about is my Quarterstaff upgrade. So this Quarterstaff, very high amounts of fizz, good lightning, well not good lightning, it's actually pretty low lightning, but very high crit, very high attack speed, and good melee gems. This Quarterstaff, the way you craft this is you use a recombinator. I used 2 good mods on one Quarterstaff that had 4 bad mods. So 6 mods, 2 good, 4 bad. I kept the 2 good mods. I combined it with another Quarterstaff that is with a tier 1 mod, the worst possible mod ever, which results in me having 2 good mods and 1 really bad mod on my Quarterstaff, my 3 mod Quarterstaff. Then I get triple exalt chance to roll something good. I ended up rolling something good. So I used the Whittling to remove the bad mod. And then I'm currently using a Whittling to remove the lightning damage. Well, I was before I decided to call it for this character. The next thing I'm going to talk about, before I just want to highlight is that this has a very high amount of fizz damage, and this you need to be very careful about because when you map, I actually use Lightning Infusion now. You see here, I'm putting Lightning Infusion and hit and run for my mapping links. This is because without Lightning Infusion, you see my lightning damage is like 300 to 260k, so 2,600, and my fizz damage is like 3,000 to 5,000. It's way more than my lightning damage. Because you want Flicker Strike to shock, I talked about this in the previous video, but to make it so that it procs Herald of Thunder on every hit, I'm now using Lightning Infusion to make my lightning damage much, much higher. So it's 50-50 distribution, basically. But on bosses, I'm taking off Lightning Infusion, I'm using Conk Effect for more damage for both of them. Lightning Infusion, remember, it reduces the cold and light and the cold and fire, and I have a tiny bit of cold and a tiny bit of fire, so Conk Effect results in more damage. If you're using a different type of Quarterstaff, one that is elemental based, so for example, this base bolting Quarterstaff, you won't actually, you probably don't need to use Lightning Infusion. You can use another support gem, so you can use Close Combat. But that's how I solved this issue, because I needed to make sure I could shock for Herald of Thunder, but my Quarterstaff was primarily physical, so I used Lightning Infusion to turn my physical into the lightning damage, which means that it will shock, which means that it will proc Herald of Thunder when I flicker around. That's kind of just like my thought process on this particular Quarterstaff, because in SSF you can't just say, oh, I'm going to buy this Quarterstaff that is lightning base. You can't just get one, right? So I had to kind of work around this and get this to work. Okay. The next thing I did was I farmed better jewels, in particularly this ruby jewel here. A lot of people on Trade League are using Against the Darkness Timeless jewel, and the jewel would have like 3% damage as extra lightning or extra cold damage. Personally, I don't think that's very good. Like, it's fine, but I think this is a much, much better jewel. And the reason why this is a really insane jewel is mainly because 2 lines. The Rage on hit, which I fractured, the jewel is bugged. When I don't hold Alt, it doesn't show the fracture. When I hold Alt, it shows it. But the Rage on hit with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notables results in 5 Rage on hit. And the melee damage is really good, although that's not the insane line. The insane line is the increased effect of notable passive skills in radius. The reason why this is really, really good is because this node here, ignore the minion line, that's a dead mod on this ruby jewel, but this mod here gives you base crit, and base crit is really, really good for scaling the rest of your crit. So this one here gives me 1.24% crit hit chance, and rage on melee hit. The reason why this is important is because it actually frees up skill points. You can see here that I used to take these 3 nodes here for crit. So you see 10% and 25%. I actually don't need this anymore because the base crit over here, as well as, I think it's like, this node here, this 31%, which is, I think it's 25%. If I take this out, it's 25%. So those two in combination allow me to cap my crit on my flicker. So you can see here that my flicker is at 100%, but it frees up 3 skill points, which is important. So I'm putting 1 skill point here for it was the best damage that POB told me. And I'm grabbing these 2 nodes here for more critical damage and more crit damage bonus. This is melee damage and crit damage bonus. So that's why I think this particular line for increased effect on notable passive skills for this particular setup on Flicker Strike is insane. You can see that this node here gives me base crit and rage on hit. This one here gives me 43% crit damage bonus because it's getting boosted up. Rage on hit and strength. This one here is 31% crit chance, rage on hit, int. This one here, rage on hit. This one here, 31% accuracy, 31% crit damage, and rage on hit and dex. Like, these nodes are absolutely ridiculous, especially when combined with this mod on the Ruby. The other jewel I have is just one here with 15% attack damage and 18% increased damage with hits against rare and unique enemies. And my final jewel is the one I used previously, ES jewel, crit damage bonus, magnitude of shock, and the ailment threshold. I'm just gonna make sure you get a Ruby jewel. I think this spot is insane for Flicker, especially since you can take all these nodes here and get extreme efficiency for your skill points for damage. Finally, I'm going to cover the use of Meditate. So this is not an offensive use. This is more of a defensive use. And it was inspired by Sarge 2's video, as well as our Kaiser's Monk. Because they're playing hardcore, they're running Meditate to double their ES. And I was just thinking, like, I might as well use it to double my ES so I can have more max hit and I can tank boss attacks. Because in Flicker, you can't really cancel it, right? In the very first clip of this video, the clip against Xesht, you can actually see me tanking the hand slam from Xesht. He nearly one-shots me, but because of my overflow, I don't get one shot. The way you get this to work is, 1, you need to drop Eternal Youth here. This does not work with Meditate. And what I'm doing is I'm weapon swapping, and I have a lot of energy shield recharge rate weapon passives. So you can see over here, I have a bunch of them. Then now when I meditate, it's pretty quick. And then when it's finished, I can go back and do my Flicker stuff. What this actually results in is that what I'll do is I'll swap, I'll profane ritual, I'll meditate, all the things, and then they come to me. And then I'll channel a little bit longer, and then I'll swap back and start flickering as usual. And you have to make sure that you maintain this between different packs, because you will take chip damage during your flicker. So just keep that in mind. In terms of quality of life, it's not as good as Eternal Youth plus Life Flask, because you can just spam Life Flask when you're in Flicker Strike. But it frees up your Mana Flask slot, so you can put in 2 Mana Flasks, which then allows you to not have to do this waste gate kind of Mana Flask swap tech every single time you want to do a boss. You can just keep those 2 in, because you're not using your flasks at all. Especially not your Mana Flask, because you're using Mana Remnants. So it's just a bit of quality of life here, and you get double your ES, which makes it very, very safe for Uber bosses. I will just point out quickly that I only have 4000 ES, like without overflow, and that's like really bad. My helmet has 300, this can go up to 500. My gloves has 115, I think this can go up to like nearly 300. My boots have 100, and they can go up to like 300 as well. And my chest piece here, it's a good chest piece, this one, but I can still go a bit higher. On our Kaiser and Sarge's characters in hardcore, they both have, I think, around 8000 ES, 9000 ES. It's like 7000 to 9000 range, basically. With those upgrades, my character can get the same, because I'm using the same notables as them on the passive tree. A lot of my passive tree was inspired by them, especially coming down to here and grabbing these nodes here. That was the main part that they had. But it allows me to get a very, very high amount of ES, and I can basically match their ES if my gear was better. But I have not kind of felt the need to farm on this character anymore, because he's basically finished. He can kill all tier 4 bosses. So I'm kind of hopped off to a new character. I'm going to try and learn something new on crossbows. Finally, I'm just going to cover the absolute min-max tech. If you really need to squeeze damage in SSF, this is how you would do it. It is with Voltaic Mark, Sniper's Mark, and Single Out. Okay, so on bosses, what you want to do if you need more damage is you want to take off Herald of Thunder. You're going to put in a self-cast Sniper's Mark. On the boss, you will cast your Sniper's Mark. You will Inferno Cry. Sorry. You will shock the boss first with your Storm Wave. So we're going to hit him into his shocks. Then we're going to cast Sniper's Mark. We're going to War Cry. Then we're going to Flicker. The reason why is because the critical damage bonus, increased crit damage bonus, seems to snapshot with Flicker's damage. The reason why I say this is, one, I counted 10 flickers using, like, going frame by frame and counting how much damage they did. The damage of the first flicker was actually less than the damage of all the other flickers. I think it's just the RNG roll, like the damage roll. But I didn't notice any substantial dip in damage after the Sniper's Mark has been consumed of the boss. I'm fairly convinced it works. And 10 Frenzy Flicker, another Flicker Strike YouTuber, told me that they tested this in the previous patch and there were no changes to the Talos interaction. At least we think there were no changes. So I'm still fairly convinced this works. The next one is Voltaic Mark. What you would do is you'll put this into your cast on crit link. So you'll replace Profane Ritual with this because it's not doing anything against bosses. And you'll put in single out. This will increase the amount of shock effect on the boss, which means that you deal more damage. And single out allows the boss to have their armor broken when you're flickering. The reason why this is important is because my quarterstaff is physical. This only applies if you're doing physical damage with your quarterstaff. If your quarterstaff is a bolting quarterstaff, which has no... Well, this one has physical flat, but for example, let's see if I can find one that has... This one here, no physical damage, only lightning damage on this quarterstaff. This will not apply. The only reason why I decided to do this is because I looked at my flicker damage, and it says that I'm doing physical damage, and it says that I'm doing 3,000 to 5,000 physical damage. Lightning is 1,000 to 4,000. This is with my mapping setup. If I'm using the bossing setup, you can see that my physical goes up even more and my lightning goes down even more. Which means that the Armour Break from single out will boost my physical damage component of Flicker Strike by 20%. Because armor broken means that they take 20% more damage. It says here, fully broken armor take 20% increased phys damage from hits, and Flicker Strike is a hit. So that's kind of to min-max your damage even further. I will just quickly mention that I am using Lightning Infusion and Hit and Run for my clearing links. And that's because my flicker is primarily physical. So putting on Lightning Infusion makes it so that it does a ton of lightning, which allows it to shock and kill shocked enemies for Herald of Thunder. This will only be applicable if you have a physical based quarterstaff. So any large amounts of fizz on your quarterstaff. Generally, if you have a bolting quarterstaff, like the one with the lightning damage base, you want to put close combat in this link instead of Lightning Infusion. Okay, I think that more or less covers it for the kind of main techs. The one more thing I will mention is that this amulet here is a dead amulet on bosses. Like, yes, it makes it so that you can cast your Profane Ritual once to gain 6 charges, and then you can flicker immediately. But if you used an amulet that gave you... I think I have an amulet here. No, it was probably in here. Okay, I forgot where it was. But anyways, it's in one of my stash tabs. And it's a melee skill gem amulet. Let's see if I have one here. So this one here has a level 1 melee skill gems. But you can get up to 2. This one here has 2, and you can get up to 3. So if you really wanted to min-max damage, you would have an amulet with melee skill gems. You would swap it out with Serpent's Egg, which would then give you a ton more damage, because every level of flicker gives you a pretty decent chunk of damage. So currently my flicker is level 25. I'm not exactly sure if I can test this. I can show this because I lose attributes. Oh, okay, it's kind of... What is this? 27, 31 mil.
Thunderous demise.
Okay, no, I'm losing my gear socket, which means I lose int, which means I'm losing like other random stuff. So it's not very good. It's not very. I can't really show how much damage it will give you, but it should give you. I can go to POB. Just gonna check on POE Wiki. It's like 20% more damage. So that should, in theory, allow me to push this build to one-shot Uber bosses without the need of any uniques. If I just put a +3 melee skill gem amulet here, but I haven't found any with attributes on them, and this thing gives me attributes, and when I take this off, it breaks my items, so I couldn't be bothered. But that's how you can increase the damage more. And of course, increase damage in rings. Like flat damage on rings can help as well. Crit on gloves can help as well. Flat damage on gloves can help as well. There's a bunch of more ways that you can actually get damage. But with this character, it's not super min-maxed on the gear. I was still able to basically nearly one-shot tier 4 bosses. But yeah, that covers all the key changes that you need to apply to your build if you want to try and one-shot tier 4 bosses. Basically min-maxing the damage for single target. And clear, again, I covered this in the previous video, clear is all solved by scaling Herald of Thunder. And Herald of Thunder scales off flat damage on your quarterstaff because it takes that as its attack damage. So increase fizz, flat lightning, flat fire, flat cold. It will all help to scale Herald of Thunder damage. And in this case, I actually swapped reach and mag effect on Herald of Thunder to make it clear a bit better. But yeah, that covers it for my Flicker Strike Invoker in SSF. I will just quickly do stats again. So, played 4 days, killed 300k monsters. I think my Pilfering ring is still on this character. Yep, that's my Pilfering ring. And then I have the 2 special ones. So I killed 6 of each boss. I killed whatever those numbers are. I will just mention that I didn't bother to kill Arbiter of Ash, so I don't have a showcase for it, because I literally could not find citadels on my... Like, I found 1 citadel, and like I literally could not find a single citadel. Like, there was just no citadels at all in my spawn, so I couldn't be bothered to farm. Like, I just can't find citadels. There's just no citadels anywhere. But yeah, that was it. This build can kill Arbiter of Ash T4. It will probably take 2 flickers, and you need to make sure that you don't flicker when Arbiter of Ash has his damage reduction. So you may need to do some mechanics, but your first flicker, again, should do 20 to 25 million with my setup, exactly my setup. If you swap this over to +3 million skill gems, if you get better flat, if you have better flat on your rings, you have better flat on your gloves, you should be able to one-shot tier 4 Arbiter without any issues. But yeah, that covers it for SSF Flicker Strike Invoker. I'm off to play a Plasma Burst crossbow character, with the goal to hopefully one-shot bosses with Plasma Burst, but we'll see how that goes. Anyways, thanks for listening. If you liked the video, if you liked the guides, like and subscribe, leave a comment if you have any questions, and I'll see you in the next video.